Welcome back to the Roto Moto Fantasy Show. My name is Donnie, and this one I'm covering Indy 1. I have 5 riders I want you to look for when you're making your picks, tips for picking your FFL, and a look at my way too early Wednesday morning team for the race. But before we can get to Indy 1, as always, let's recap and review the numbers from Houston 3. 15,015 players set a lineup for H3, of which 7,751 of them paid to enter the championship league. The absolute best score that could have been had this week was 320 points, consisting of 3 perfect 52s in the 250 class. Add Craig and Webb for FFLs, and that makes a potential max of 350. No one got even close to that, however, as 1 in 4 picked an FFL for the 250s, 1 in 5 for the 450. Christian Craig took it for the 250s, which over half of the guesses picked, but only 1 out of 20 picked Cooper Webb. The median championship score was 207, which means that if you score 208 or more, you did better than half of the paid field. We are down to 2.6 All-Stars per team after a trend of picking 3 or more on average for week 1. I expect to see that continue to go down, with Forkner and RJ missing the race. That opened up 2 more double point eligible spots, and 26 of the 30 clocked double points. Grant Harlan became the very first 250 rider on the season to make the main and miss double points. A season high 103.7 combined pick trend missed the main and scored 0 points, which means that every team had, on average, 1 guy that scored a big fat 0. Props to those of you guys that dodged that this week. My team had a great outing for 7 of the 8, but unfortunately for me and 27% of other players, Hunter Sales couldn't buy a start to save his life, and he was left watching from the sidelines. My ranking is uninspiring, but I'm trusting the process of minimizing unnecessary risks to maximize score. In the Roto Moto League, Kathy Hawaii absolutely crushed it this week with 306 points after correctly picking 3 52s in the 250 class and 1 of the 2 FFLs. Burner 154 takes the season lead with 756, averaging 252 points per round. Before we get to the Indy 1 picks, just a friendly reminder that this is an entirely privateered operation. Someone recently thought that I was on the PulpMX payroll, and I assure you that I am not. I do all of this on my own, and the only financial support I get are from viewers like you via Patreon subscriptions, as well as our merch store. If that is something you're interested in, you can check the links in the description below or wait until the end of the video to find out. But also, Steve, call me. Call me if you're interested. I'm recording this very early on Wednesday as I will be heading to Indianapolis for the Saturday race. I know it's more than likely that guys like Sexton, Forkner, and Hampshire are not lining up, but until we get an official confirmation, I am assuming they have a chance at lining up for this round. Dylan Woodcock is out after that crushing blow in his round 3 heat race. Dylan has posted an injury update on Instagram. For more information about his crash injury and recovery, be sure to check out our recent video about Dylan. Pettis is confirmed out for the season, and Lopes has no timetable for return. Anstey and McElrath are both hopeful for Orlando returns, as well as Bowers and Henry Miller. On to the 5 guys I want you to look at. Number 1 is 250 All-Star, and let's stop and have a gander at Michael Moseman. The lone TLD gas rider in the 250 East Coast class is carrying a 4 handicap, and that's a ton of value with RJ and Forkner banged up. He has looked very strong this year, including hole shots and heat wins. If Jet doesn't lay one into his side late in the main at H3, he could easily have podium there, but instead he ended up with a 5th, which is all that we need to max out. Also in the 250s, I'm looking hard at Francis Thomas Dew. The 773 is clinging onto value at a 4 handicap, and this is very likely the last time he's going to be poised for big points. Thomas has consistently qualified in the top 10. If he could pull a start, I think he could be battling at the top of those non-all-stars and flirting with 40 points for you. Every week, I choose a high handicap hero of the round that goes out to a rider with a handicap of 10 or more that I think you should target in the event you like to play it loose and go broke for big points. This week, I'm looking at TJ Albright. The privateer Kawasaki rider is an 11 handicap, meaning he needs to make the main and take down just a single rider for double points. This week's kind of a cheap shot, as TJ is not really as much of a long shot as he's already made every single main this year and has done so straight out of every heat. His handicap has plunged to an 11 after this success, but I still think he has a good amount of value to score in the mid-30s with an upside of a perfect score if he gets just a little bit of help in this depleted field. Moving over to the 450 class, I want you to look at another TLD gas rider. This time it is 450's Justin Barcia. Bam Bam's handicap stays steady at a 3 after a 4th place finish. If Barcia's shifter doesn't break at H2, I think he could have the red plate still, even without Kenny's penalty, but that's just how good he's riding. But have to be wary a little, as it is possible that he or the bike were just happen to be gelling with the Houston dirt, and we are now moving to a very different makeup in the Midwest. Either way, as the riders shake out, I still think it's more likely to see Barcia sniffing around the top 5 than not this round. The one guy this week that I want you to stay away from is Dean Wilson. And no, we are not boycotting Dino because of his issues with Ken Roczen. It's just that Dean has had a 2 handicap the entire season, and that's because he's finished 10th, 11th, and 11th. He's qualifying 11th, he's starting 13th, he's finishing 11th. This is just simply where Dean slots into this very stacked field. Sure, he could score a 9th or maybe even an 8th is possible, but that's still just 32 to 34 points, and it's 100% possible that Dean could have very well finished behind Dylan, Marv, and Marty last week, and that's 14th, and that is not what you want to see. Sit out on Dean until he has a rough finish, and then you can pounce when his handicap rises. The FFL, or first to the finish line, is an optional wager where you attempt to guess the rider in each main that reaches the finish line and is the first to start the opening lap. If your selected rider in each class is successful, you will earn 15 extra points for that week's score, but if you guess wrong, you subtract 7. If you wanted to take a look at FFLs, things are starting to make sense a bit. Christian Craig has come out to establish himself as a front runner, especially early in the race, and with some of his biggest competition ailing and RJ and Forkner, I think it's really likely a 2-horse race between Craig and Jet for most FFLs. Maybe a guy like Nickel sneaks in for 2. I'm probably not picking for Indy 1, but if I do, Craig is the only guy I want in on that spot. The 450s is kind of a mess though. 3 riders getting 3 FFLs in the first 3 rounds. But if I may and must suggest a rider, let's look at Justin Barcia. He hasn't been that far up front in the last 2 mains after leading wire to wire in the opener, but he has crushed all 3 of his heat race starts, so that puts him at 4 of 6 of his hole shots if you count all of his gate drops this year. Also, even though AC hasn't nailed one yet, he is the most consistent guy to run up front early, race in and race out, and should be considered here. My way too early Wednesday team looks like this. I have Michael Moseman for my all-star for the reasons we already talked. I'm going to pair him with Grant Harlan, who I wanted to pick last week so bad, but couldn't, and luckily I didn't because he had a rough race and an even higher handicap this week. Give me Thomas Dew for what is likely his last race before his big point potential completely evaporates, and TJ Albright for high upside match with a high chance to come straight out of the heat. My 450s are captained by Justin Barcia for obvious reasons already discussed. If I could pick Marv here, I 100% absolutely would, as I believe he is the lock, but instead I will go Osborne. This is kind of his last chance to get back into some sort of hunt, as an otherwise abysmal finish would bury his title hopes. I have Vince Freeze at an 8, which I think is the absolute highest handicap I see coming from the Moto Concepts rider, and he's had just a lot of bad luck this season. And begrudgingly, I have Big Rig Benny Bloss as my 4th. At a 9, he still is primed for big points, but I need Big Rig to stay off the ground to do so. The race day schedule is your typical Saturday fare. Race day live hits the Peacock app at 2 p.m. Eastern for a 3.5-hour program. I will be at the race, and I am hoping to still do the cheat sheets on the go. Patreon should see the enhanced cheat sheet at around 6:30 Eastern time, and Twitter and Instagram will see the basic cheat sheet about an hour before gates drop, about 7 o'clock. The race will be live on both the Peacock app and NBCSN at 8 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget to join us back here on YouTube for the live after show directly from the stadium. Unfortunately, with COVID concerns, media access has been very restricted, so I will not be able to get anywhere near the riders. I do not have a press pass, but I still will be able to do the show from our seats, at least until they kick us out of the arena. Be sure to follow Moto on both Twitter and Instagram for qualifying insights, injury reports, the fantasy cheat sheets, as well as some stats and banter as the race plays out. This channel is made possible by good people like Greg F., Harper R., Doug G., Trevor, and Travis Marks. Thank you so much for watching Roto Moto. My name is Donnie. I'll see you guys on race day.